All right, welcome to another episode of Your Business Unleashed podcast. Today we're talking about AI, and I've got a wonderful guest who is a fellow CPA in the industry from New Zealand and Canada. Welcome, Peter McCarroll, CPA, CA. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, Clayton, it's good to be here.
Yeah. So you own an accounting firm, Fuel Accountants. Where are you located?
In Toronto. We're just outside of Toronto.
All right, Toronto. So there, for anybody who says that I'm very Alberta-centric with my content, you can bugger off. I've got a Toronto fellow CPA on here. This is a national initiative to try and get AI going in our companies. We are deploying AI in our accounting firm at scale. We're a little, sort of iffy and wishy-washy on how to roll this out to the team, how to do it safely. What are the security concerns? How do you make sure that people aren't just dumping massive amounts of time into playing with AI rather than being productive with it, right? And those are all the sort of challenges that we're working through now. So, thinking through that has been a challenge. Tell me about your background and what you're doing to help, guys like me and firms like us sort of get through that.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all started when I was, like you, thinking about what am I going to do with AI in my own firm. And, that started in 2024. And I started by, learning as much as I could. I got training on AI. And of course, back then that was mostly on prompting and, but really started to think through the consequences of AI, not just the tool, but where is this going? And so that's when I started writing about AI for other accountants, because I could see that this was going to be a lot more than just another software that we buy.
Yeah. Yeah. And so now I guess I could engage you as a firm owner deploying AI. And what would that engagement look like? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we've got a number of things we're delivering. So right now, our key product that we deliver is called the Practice Transformation Program. And it's a 9-part program where we help firm leaders think through the leadership aspects of their firm with respect to what AI is going to do in their firm. It's not a technology program. It's all about leadership and positioning. And then we also have some AI training for the team. So we have an AI prompting course for accountants. And we haven't released it yet. We have a Claude for accounting or for accountants project that will be able to be used within the team to teach them all those nuances of how to use Claude for an accountant, rather than just, there's so much stuff on the internet, but some of it's so shallow. We want to deliver something that really helps accountants really get to use it well.
Right. And so what are the biggest, just let's think about just generally as service businesses or professional services business, maybe law firms or engineers, whatever, any service business. As we're rolling this out, what are the biggest pain points that you're seeing in the industry and from the leadership or from teams? What are you seeing?
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say so much there's pain points yet. There's pain points in learning how to deploy it well. And so a lot of firms, or a lot of knowledge-based companies are using AI, but they don't know what they're trying to achieve with it. And I think this is the problem that accountants are having. I think this is the problem that any knowledge professional is having. We know it's so powerful. We know it can do so much, but we actually don't know what problem we're trying to solve. And so when I'm teaching accountants, one of my famous sayings is that if you don't know what problem you're trying to solve, no tool you buy will solve that problem. And I've just been to 2 massive conferences and hundreds of vendors, in each of those rooms, trying to sell AI solutions to people. But if you don't know what problem you're actually trying to solve, their solution, is only going to give you marginal improvement. And so that's, I think, the biggest fundamental problem. And it's a leadership problem, not a technology problem.
Yeah. And is that an AI specific thing? I think that's just generally, right? You go to these conferences. I remember, I think my first big accounting conference was in Boston. I was working with a vendor out there at the time, and I flew out to Accountex in Boston, and I was just overwhelmed by all the vendors at this place and going, holy smokes. And you can kind of see a use case in all of them, and you sit down and talk with them and you go, yeah, I could see a use case for this. And the reason I didn't sign up for all 80 of them or however many vendors there were in this big hall is, to me, this just seems like all I'm going to do is the firm is going to stop. All activities, all billable work will cease, and everybody will work on deploying these tools. Well, what are our aims here, right? Like, what are we trying to solve? And so really identifying those pain points it's a huge thing that leadership needs to tackle early on in the AI journey is what are we trying to solve, right? So what else? Is there anything else that you're seeing in terms of roadblocks or issues that we need to think about?
So the second major issue is, again, it's mental. It's not about the technology itself. It's what is AI going to do to my business? And I don't care what business you're in. If this isn't something you've sat down and done a whole bunch of navel gazing around, you're probably not making the right decisions. Where is AI going and what will it do in my industry? On the accounting front, I'm looking at where AI is going with transaction processing, with tax preparation. And, I'm looking at that and I'm seeing that in less than 2 years, we will work totally different than the way we work today. And our clients will have different expectations. And very importantly, the pricing pressures and pricing expectations will have shifted.
Yeah.
Now,
okay.
If we don't take account of that now and start preparing our firm for not just reacting to that, but how do we live in that world and how do we add value to our clients when the transactions are being done automatically, then that's how we think about repositioning our firm. It's not about, I can just do transactions faster. Yes.
Yeah. Nobody cares if your AI is faster than my AI. Like, that's not, clients are going to pay for that.
No, exactly. And that's the pricing challenge. And that's a strategic critical issue. And this is where many accountants and I would say any lawyers, any knowledge, business, if they haven't started talking about this now, it may be too late, because these things are going to come, and they're going to come in about 12 months. And they're going to shock everybody who has not yet thought about it.
I'm trying to find the podcast that I just listened to on Diary. It was I think it was Mo Gadat from like the former Google exec. No, maybe. I think it might have been him. Anyways, this was earlier in June. And I guess let me step back, because he kind of opened my eyes. That podcast sort of opened my eyes on how quick this is coming, right? And we have to respect that. I think Canada is it's a slightly different situation than the US for a number of reasons, which we can talk about. But when we look at AI deployment and people go, hey, aren't you scared? Aren't you scared that this is going to take your job? Because if you go through all of the job replacement, like if you go through the studies that talk about over the last 5 years, that talk about AI and job displacement and job augmentation. I mean, our industry is at the very top of that list of industries that are set to be disrupted, right?
We're the example that everybody uses.
Right. And why? Well, because we work with data. And so data this stuff is very good at parsing data. I mean, the use cases are incredible, and we can talk about that, but I have a different approach. I think that this is either going to be Terminator, right? Where, Skynet, what is the line from the movie where it becomes self-aware? And I can't remember the date. I should write down the date because it's a famous movie, right? But it becomes self-aware. And what happens when it becomes self-aware? And this podcast, Diary of a CEO podcast on early June, really went through that, and what this man believes is coming, and not in a couple of years like now. He believes that agentic AI, I think, is pretty much on our doorstep if it hasn't already, or not agentic AI. What do they call it? AGI? What is that? Like general intelligence, where basically AI can perform human thinking tasks better than any human can, right? Yeah. And we've got talk of all this AI are self-programming now, and they're sort of self-developing, and you go, okay, well, this is a bit of a snowball. And then we've got, on the other hand, we've got Sam Altman sort of changing his tune from a few years ago where it was a bit of fear porn, going, this is going to replace everybody's job and we need to get ready for it. And now, like recently, he's kind of come back from that and gone, no, hasn't created the job disruption that I thought, and I was wrong. And I personally don't put a lot of trust in Sam Altman. I believe he's a very good salesman. And so you go, have you just switched what you're saying in order to sell more licenses, or is this actually happening? And so from our perspective, from a job displacement perspective, I'm thinking about, okay, AI is here. It's really good. We're rolling it across our team. I've got projects. CRA is clearly using it because I think we're going to ask them at the roundtable, but the volume and speed with which they're issuing post-assessment reviews has been really demoralizing this year, because now I have to respond to them all. And every time I see a new one, my soul gets crushed a little bit, even though I've got a project in Claude that can respond to a CRA post-assessment review in approximately 3 minutes now, once we go get the data out of the file. And in fact, Cowork can go get the data out of the file if you trust Cowork, which we haven't gotten there yet in our firm. And so everything is going to get faster, and everything is getting faster. And these major tech execs, I think it was one of the top execs at Anthropic a couple of weeks ago, said, hey, everybody in the world needs to stop developing this now and give our economies a chance to catch up. That's scary language from an executive at Anthropic to be using. My perspective and our firm's approach has been, we need to get this out to the team as quickly as possible and figure out and align ourselves with the most ethical AI companies, which is, when we look at the behaviors of, the contracts, for example, that OpenAI is signing with the US government that Anthropic refused, for example, that's an indicator to me of ethics and why we switched from OpenAI to Anthropic. And it turns out Claude, for our use case, is way better anyways. But that's not to say that a new player might not come along. There's a new Chinese player that's trying to overthrow Anthropic right now. And so, all this to be said is, where is the industry going, right? So where is the industry going, and what does work for a CPA firm look like in 10 years time? Where are we going to have to focus?
Well, I have no idea what it'll look like in 10 years time. I can tell you what I think it'll look like in 2 years time.
All right, let's have it.
Yeah. 2 years time, the transactions will be mostly managed by themselves. We will be at a point of what I call real-time bookkeeping, or as near real-time as we possibly can.
Which the last glimpse of that we got was blockchain, which that kind of went, has it gone nowhere? It went nowhere, right? And blockchain, by the way, requires open banking, which it works, coding transactions in the US is different than coding. And here's one of the key differences, and let's riff on this for a second, then we'll get back to your 2-year thing, is the US generally has open banking, where you can AI into a US bank and pull the actual core transactional data, whereas in Canada, we don't. And our banking regime is a lot more, let's say, regulated, and it's trickier to get bank feed data out of there. And so you went, well, with blockchain, it solves all that, but that kind of went nowhere. And so US has all regulated. We have indirect tax, for example, right? You can't. So the IRS, in a lot of circumstances, will accept a credit card statement as a source document support, whereas we don't. We need the invoice with the GST number with, so there's a bigger auditing requirement in Canada than there is in the US. So really, let's talk about Canadian firms and Canadian, so sorry, back to your 2-year plan. So yeah.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I've always said that bookkeeping in Canada is slightly, I wouldn't say harder, but there are more nuances to it than bookkeeping in America.
Can we just say we're behind the rest of the world?
Well, I wouldn't say we're behind. I actually think it's more refined in Canada.
Okay.
And because of that GST factor, this is the unfortunate thing for Canadians, is that all of these products are being developed for the American market. And in the American market, it's predominated by cash basis tax filing.
Sure.
They don't have input tax credits like we do. And so they don't really have to worry about sales tax. And they can do what I call sledgehammer bookkeeping. Here's a bank feed, slap a code on it, post it.
Where your main objective with that bookkeeping is to complete some compliance exercise.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's very low value. It's not very nuanced, but it can be done fast. And in Canada, we can't support that because we have these extra layers that are a requirement for our basic compliance. So every business is going to be GST registered. So you can't just slap a default tax rate on something without some additional insight into that transaction. If you're in BC, oh, God help you, you've got now a whole new layer because you've got 2 types of sales taxes.
Or Saskatchewan, or Manitoba, or Quebec. Yes.
Exactly. That's right. So, so it's way more nuanced than than the US is. Plus, in order to get those taxes right, you almost always want to see a source document, because that's the only way you know for sure if you've got the numbers correct. And if you don't get that correct, as you said earlier, CRA is way more aggressive at reviewing or auditing than the IRS is.
Yeah.
So we have a much higher chance.
Yeah, just for any of our clients listening, that's why we're annoying. I'm sorry for being so annoying. That's why.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
As accountants, we have a higher duty, and I'm sure you are the same. I want my clients to sleep well at night. I don't want them to be worried that they are going to be audited by the CRA. And I tell my clients, I can't stop you from being reviewed or audited by CRA. But what I can do is make sure that the work we've done is robust enough that should you be audited or reviewed, you have nothing to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because we did our job right the first time.
Right.
And if we go to sledgehammer accounting, we aren't doing the job right the first time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's a problem.
Okay. So, going back to a few use cases, the simple stuff, and I spoke about this at the WagePoint Summit a couple of weeks ago, and I've got another talk coming up on AI geared towards accountants, is like, this is overwhelming stuff. Like the pace of change is even overwhelming, right?
Yes.
And I wrote a presentation in early May, and by the time I had to deliver the presentation 6 weeks later, my presentation had changed because, Claude had released 4 new models, and the use cases that we could use it for were substantially different. And now I'm just coming off of, pretty well a month of vacations. I'm hoping to take, with work in between. I got Starlink, I'm always on, but the amount of brain power that I want to commit to keeping up, it's impossible. And it's almost, I almost found myself through my June crunch in a bit of a, I don't want to say depression, but my head game was rough there for a bit, man, because I'm trying to keep up with all these changes, trying to properly guide my team whilst trying to keep up with the compliance workflow and increased CRA activity, which we're seeing a lot of. And by the way, that's clear across the country. We're seeing a lot more CRA activity. I mean, when you spend money like we've been spending money, the money's got to come from somewhere. And so instead of, we got to pay for $1 billion condo bailouts in Vancouver somehow. So how do you do that? Of course, you target small businesses and try and get them to justify their $123 donation claims on their personal tax returns. I guess that's CRA's approach. So anyways, so that's been very frustrating. And I've taken a couple weeks off and gone and been in my trailer. And you got a 30th anniversary coming up, I understand. Congratulations.
Yeah.
And you're off to Alaska, right?
Yes.
And you go, how am I going to keep up while I'm in Alaska? Right? Like I'm going to be behind. I'm going to have material to keep up on. So it's really overwhelming. And you go, where do you start as an accounting firm, right? Like where do you even start? And I think a lot of people have caught on to it. This is really good at helping me draft letters and emails. But that's that's the minimum acceptable standard now, right? It's very good at that. It's low-hanging fruit. And by the way, edit everything that you can to get rid of the double dashes. That's just such a sign of AI, right? Like, and the list dumping, and I can tell when something's written by AI now. So where do you even start?
So I'd say there are 3 levels of AI. Doesn't matter whether you're an accountant, a lawyer, even a plumber, there are 3 levels of AI. The first level is the efficiency level. That's trying to do things faster and better. Using it to draft emails is a method of doing that, right? It's like, hey, how can I do more with less? How can I get slightly better quality? And in the accounting world, that's where most people are focused. We are trying to do our coding faster. We're trying to, have some skills or some scripts that get run that like you said with your CRA, I've got one just the same with a CRA response letter. How do we do more things faster? The problem is that all the research shows us that that's going to get you 15 to 20% cost savings, and that's about it.
Okay.
And the thing with going after cost savings is there's only so far you can shave. Okay, it's not endless. You can only go down so far. And the further you go down, the more you start hurting your customer service delivery. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Now, the second layer of AI use is the strategic thinking layer. And a lot of people, especially the knowledge professions, have worked out that Claude or ChatGPT is really fantastic at helping you see things you didn't see. Okay, and this is where I spend a lot of my time, whether this be writing content, whether this be evaluating things that you're doing, letting it coach you on an example. Every time you have an interaction with somebody, I now record all of those meetings with a transcriber tool. And then after that meeting, I can go back to, I use Claude, I can go back to Claude and I can ask Claude to critique that conversation. And I can tell Claude the things that I was thinking about and the things I want the most advice on. And it will now either interview me or it'll tell me how it perceived that conversation. And even when I say, I'm really interested in how I handled this particular area, it'll tell me that. But then it'll tell me, hey, here's one thing that you didn't ask me about that you actually need to know about.
Interesting.
Okay? Yeah, it's really good. So
our teams could be using that for their client calls to say, here's what you missed. Maybe think about talking to the client about that next time. That's a really good. Yeah, I love that use case.
And there's different layers even within that. I mean, you can do the strategic thinking at the higher level of where are we going? And this is what I recommend every business should be doing today, is asking, where is my industry going? What are the risks facing my industry? What are the pricing pressures that'll come in 6 months, 12 months time? Okay, because if you haven't thought about those, nothing you do at the lower end will solve those problems.
Okay.
Then you can do it more on the personal coaching side. So if you're a manager and you've got staff and you want to have a difficult conversation with a staff member, Claude or ChatGPT can coach you through that conversation. You can do a dry run with them first. Or if you've had a conversation and you want to know, hey, maybe it was a sales conversation. I did this the other day. So I booked a sales conversation. I recorded it. At the end, I went back to Claude and I gave it the transcript, and Claude ripped shreds off me about
that's
the
a
things
great idea.
I love in the sales conversation.
Yeah,
and
I'm just
you
taking
can tell
notes
it,
here.
hey, I want to follow the spin process. Tell me where I got off track and tell me what I could do differently next time. And it's fantastic at doing this. And here's the thing. It doesn't mind offending you.
Yeah.
But you have to give it permission.
I see. Okay.
And most LLMs are what we call sycophantic. They are trying to please you.
Yeah.
And so I have a standing instruction in my Claude.md file, my master prompt. And I tell it that your job is not to please me. Your job is to critique me.
Yeah. Your job is to help me grow my business.
That's right.
Yeah.
Your job is to help me see things I have not seen for myself and to tell me where I'm off track. Your job is not to tell me that everything I do is great.
I love
because
that.
That's its natural tendency.
This is great. I haven't had to hire you, and I'm getting all these great tips, so I thank you.
I'll send you an invoice afterwards.
Yeah, okay, sounds good. And what was the third? So the first thing was efficiency gains.
Yeah.
And I want to riff on that a little bit more. Second thing was sort of personal coaching, or is that the third thing?
Well, the second thing is strategic thinking.
Strategic thinking, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And that can be everywhere from what's happening in my industry to the coaching, like help me think through this problem. Okay.
Yeah.
And that personal coaching is a great example of that. The third thing is growth. And this is where I think we're seeing a lot of startups in this space, but I think a lot of established businesses have not yet seen the advantages of this. Okay. So using AI to help you ideate, create, and deploy new services or products that you didn't have before. Now, in all the research on where is the ROI in AI, this is the area that we are seeing the most results in. Okay, I said with efficiency, you can only gain so much efficiency by shaving things down and making things faster.
Okay.
But if you're looking to start a new service line, you've got a zero baseline, everything is upside. There's no ROI because there's no ROI, well, there is an ROI, but you're not comparing it to anything. You're creating something new. And the ability to use AI to create new things is absolutely incredible. You can write a book in a day. You can create a training program literally in a few hours. And it's good. Now, I would never want to just have it create it and then you just launch it. But, if you give it the right material and work with it, this is why I love that phrase co-work for Claude, because that's what it feels like I'm doing. I'm co-working with a trusted partner. You can create phenomenal material that's stronger than you would have created yourself, faster than you would have created yourself, and easily pivotable. If you do something and you pilot it and you go, no, that's not very good, or I've got some gaps here. And again, take that back down to the layer before. Take the recording of what you delivered, ask your team, ask people for feedback in that session, take that recording, and now ask AI to analyze your live session and give you pointers on how you might change the content to improve it. And so you can have this dynamic feedback loop. And you're now operating at this third level. You're creating new things that could generate new revenue. And the thing that's going to happen to a lot of businesses, and accountants are not immune from this, but I think it applies maybe a lot more to some other businesses as well, is that our businesses, there are going to be people whose businesses shut down. And there are going to be whole new businesses that get created. Thousands and thousands of new businesses are going to be created because of AI.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't have to be the dichotomy of close or start up. It's reinvention. And this is where, as accountants, we have to ask, how do we reinvent or transform our business so that we can still add value to the world in a world that no longer values the compliance because the computer takes care of most of it?
Yeah, I call it data grinding. So that's super interesting that you say that. And it goes back to a previous point that I left unfinished, which I do often. Terminator, that's the one option. But the other option is like, we're building railroads here, right? I talk about building railroads. And why do I talk about that? Well, if we go back to the Industrial Revolution, like it really kicked into high gear once we were able to start transporting stuff across large distances, what machines, metal, whatever. Now we can trade with different regions more than fur, because fur, you load it on a cart and you have a horse drag it across the country. Well, now I've got a railroad. Well, I can transport people easier. I can populate the West. I can transport machinery, and everybody at that time, I think there's some writing that I've read that's like people were scared. Whoa, this is gonna take our jobs, right? We're gonna have a whole flood of immigrants or whatever coming to our region now and taking our jobs. And so that was a main fear then. And then the internet came along in 2000. You go, holy smokes, this is going to end the world, right? Y2K, all this. And it ended up creating more and more and more, right? And so I'm a railroad guy. I think that we have a huge opportunity of our lifetime to use this technology to further humanity and make our businesses better. And so the delta there between closing, staying open, that middle ground, the difference is going to be the entrepreneurs who choose to embrace it and learn it and deploy it across their teams. And we're going to fail at it, but you got to iterate, just like anything new you're trying, right? And so the only path forward that I see here, and if you're a Terminator guy, this is a bit scary, but it's to use the tools and to learn the tools. And the entrepreneurs that learn the tools and use the tools will win the day. And I also see this coming back to, you go Microsoft Word. I kind of like, what do we need that for anymore? I don't know why I'm paying for that subscription anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Because Claude's better at it. In all material respects. It's just better than Microsoft Word. And I can build my own AI and host it on a server. I can buy an LLM and host it on my server and I don't have a server, but you know what I mean, and give my team access to that and start dumping subscriptions. I can even have Claude start writing software that I am paying licensing on otherwise and start saving I think we spent 130 grand on software last year across the whole firm, including client software. And you go, how, when you talk about efficiency, I'm thinking on that level too, rather than just helping me write emails. It's like, well, can you help with website coding? Can we write a new client portal? Can we, all the things that we'll get, we can have a real custom solution now that we had to buy something off the shelf from before. We can just program that ourselves and our subscription costs go way down because we've got something in-house now, right? So I'm a railroad guy. I think there's a railroad. And going back to this podcast, this diary podcast, they were saying that with this next level AI, which has likely already arrived, they're gonna see serious job disruption in the next 12 months. That was the thrust of this podcast. And you go, okay, but then this guy, Mo Gadet, at the end of the podcast, he kind of got into the light, which is 10 years time. It's a very different world. We're going to come out of this fog. There's going to be a lot of chaos in between, and we'll be better for it. And he's very hopeful, and that relies on sort of a what do you call it? An AI that's apathetic to humans, and that's right? Apathetic, is that the right word? And I think there's a better word for it. Anyways, where this is the new world, and we're creating more because of it. And maybe we can do better at space exploration, or maybe we can do better at resource development and development of things that are good for us. Hopefully, that's where we're headed. Can we wrap on security for a minute?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that? Specifically, I'm not worried having a cloud-based LLM, Claude in the cloud. My whole team has that. I'm scared to roll out Cowork to them. And here's why I'm scared. Claude Cowork can drive your computer. So it can use your compute, your CPU on your desktop computer to move files, edit files, delete files, execute files. And it's the deleting and executing and moving and all of that I'm kind of nervous about. Or, what if this thing just goes rogue, which we've seen AI go rogue lots. It just does weird stuff sometimes. So how do you don't have to answer this, but give me some ideas, because I know that maybe there isn't a clean answer, but how do we safely deploy these tools across our team?
Yeah.
Right.
But this is one of the challenges with Claude right now, is it's a great tool for personal use. It's a little harder to deploy at the team level. And, you could be in the enterprise system and they have some extra tools in the enterprise system to help with that, but they still don't solve what I call the client confidentiality bleed problem. Okay. And there's two aspects of this. One is the going rogue side of things. Now, there are ways that you can minimize that. Okay. The thing I'm more worried about from an accountant perspective is, if you've ever used ChatGPT back in the day where they switched on memory, and now it was remembering things from prior conversations. Okay. And that was wonderful, because all of a sudden you realize that ChatGPT knew you so well. And then you have a conversation with it, and all of a sudden something you would asked it a week ago about client A started surfacing in a conversation that you were asking about client B. And you suddenly realize that memory is not always a good thing. What you want is isolation memory.
Yeah. Yeah.
You want it to remember. What you don't want is it to bleed memory.
Right. And so just at the basic level, let's just throw this out there. You need to have the right subscriptions if you're going to use this for business purposes. Okay. Absolutely. So in Claude, that's minimum the team plan. If you've got anything lower than the team plan, you can't use this for client data at all. Yeah. And I'm not saying that you can use it for client data in any other subscription level. Go check with your IT provider and your insurance company. That's on you. But the firewall of training larger language models comes around your environment when you hit the team level. And I think every AI has that level that you can sort of firewall your data. But you're talking about,
you can exclude that at the pro level, the not quite team level, where you're not training the model.
Okay.
And I think that's the baseline. So when we talk about security, there's 3 levels of security that we need to be aware of. One is, am I training the model? Okay. And anything you do that trains the model is a no-go, especially for an accountant. You never want to put proprietary information, your own intellectual property. You never want to put client information, and especially personally identifiable information, social security numbers, social insurance numbers, stuff like that, personal revenue numbers. You never want to put that in a system where they're training on that data. And one thing people need to remember here is that, people often say, well, why would I upload that to the web? You're not uploading it to the web in the same way as you are like publishing a website or posting a social media post. No one's ever going to be able to see that document that you uploaded or that prompt that you uploaded.
Sure.
The challenge when you train the model,
without these protections.
Well, even without these protections, if you put in a prompt and you include some client confidential information. No one is ever going to see that prompt or see that document by itself.
Right.
Let me give you an example. Let's say you're doing a tax return and you've got a famous client. Okay. And, we'll use Celine Dion because she's Canadian. Okay. Let's say you're doing the tax return for Celine Dion. And so you put a T1 return into into a training model prompt, like a free model. And you ask it to critique the return and tell you if you've left anything out. Okay. Great. Seems innocent. No one's going to see her T1 return, her tax return. Okay. However, one day, a month from now, someone might be Googling or going to the AI and asking, what's Celine Dion's net worth? And all of a sudden, in that response might be, well, in 2025, Celine Dion earned $786,000. Well, where did it get that from? It got that from the data you submitted. So you haven't posted the T1 to the internet in the way you're thinking of, but that data now becomes part of its brain, and it can answer based on part of its brain.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's why we never use a model where your subscription layer allows the model to train on your data. Has to be non-negotiable. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
The second
that's like the minimum. That's the minimum.
Exactly.
Be on the right plan. Yeah.
Yeah. You've got to be on the right plan. You've got to ensure that your data isn't being trained. The second model is data retention. How long can the LLM provider retain that data? By default, it retains it for quite a long time. And anyone in the accountant or the legal profession might say, well, actually, that's not what we want. We want to make sure that data is, and the retention's good. Okay. You want it to retain data for a very limited period of time.
Because it's better. It makes your life easier. Yeah.
Go back to it. You can come back tomorrow and go, I want to continue that conversation I was having yesterday. And if that conversation's gone, it's like, well, what you see is you're now going to start all over again. So you want retention. You just don't want retention forever, or you want to know the terms you're retaining data. Okay. And then the third layer, so we've got data, we've got feeding the model, we've got data retention. And then the third layer is this data segmented enough that it's not populating across clients? And that is the hardest one to work around, because if you've got a model that's generally got memory, that's a problem. Now, this is where Cowork is really good. Cowork, when you're working in folders only, has no memory. So there is no data bleed. If you're working in a folder for client A and that's your root folder, and you ask it a whole bunch of questions and give it a whole bunch of documents that would normally be confidential, it's looking at all that information. You then change your working folder to client B's working folder. It can't see. It's structural. It can't see, without your permission, the data in that other folder. It's limited to this folder. So Cowork, I like from that perspective, because it builds some architectural barriers around the file structure. Now, once you throw in projects is where the memory gets added. So if you've got a common project called client work, well, now it's able to think across clients. So you got to watch that. And then the other problem in Cowork and in any of these LLMs is the MCP layer. So for those that aren't aware, that's called Model Context Protocol. This is how you connect other systems into your AI. And the problem in most AI tools is that those layers are universal. They apply to your account, not to your session or your working structure.
Sure.
So if I've got, let's say I've got a client that uses Shopify, and I've got a Shopify MCP, and I'm able to connect up to client A's Shopify account. And then I pick up client D, and they use Shopify, but I haven't connected Shopify, because usually you can only have one connection type active at a time. And so I'm talking to in AI about Shopify. Well, the AI doesn't necessarily know that this is client D, but that account only belongs to client A. And you might find it starts to pull in data from that connection, because that connection is universal.
That's an awkward client meeting waiting to happen.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Your Shopify data doesn't line up with your accounting data by $300,000. And we can't work out why. And then all of a sudden you realize that those aren't even the products I sell. So where's that data coming from?
Oops. Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
So this is the harness. That's a very technical term. The harness is the sandbox that you work in, and none of the tools have yet provided us with a harness suitable for client accounting work. Microsoft is probably the closest, and theirs is the worst model. So,
Yeah.
but they have, at least because they've been in the enterprise space for so long, they are the closest to be able to create a non-bleedable client harness.
Interesting. And then what about, is there a way to help me go, well, what if one of my team connects to a client folder and deletes it deletes a whole bunch of stuff? That's main fear A with Cowork. Main fear B with Cowork is that through some social engineering, an executable file ends up on one of my team's desktops and Claude executes it. And all of a sudden we're in a world of pain, right? Like a virus or a, phishing, whatever, who knows?
Yeah. So again, with Claude, we've got a number of layers we want to think about there. And when computer use is a separate layer that I didn't mention earlier, generally speaking, Claude isn't going to execute an executable file. So, and first of all, it's not working on your desktop. So that risk is reasonably minor. It's still present, but it's not as bad as people assume. The data deletion risk, you can actually switch off data deletion as a policy in your, at least in the enterprise layer. I'm not sure about the team layer. This is where you actually look at, well, where are we storing our data? Are we storing our data in a system that we can actually roll back and manage? Now, whether that be a shared Google Drive or a Box account or some other synchronized system, so that if something goes rogue, you know that you can still go back and get that data.
So we're back to backups. Like this is a 20-year-old conversation or 30-year-old.
I don't know we'll ever be away from backups of some or version control.
Version control
would be the more modern language for it. But yeah, it's the same idea. Okay, because at the end of the day, you never want to to have a single point of failure.
Right.
And whether it be a user that just clicks the wrong button or an AI that thinks it's okay for me to delete that file, you never want to not have that backed up.
Well, and so in Cowork also, another thing you can do is say, listen, every action that you take, you can set this up as a company policy. Every action that it's set to take, it has to run by the user, right?
Yeah.
And get approval for it. You can turn that off and say, yeah, I can do whatever it wants. And on the one side, that's pretty good because you know that somebody actually has to review every action that it's taking, which is great. And somebody is responsible for whatever happened, right? You've got a person that's responsible for that. On the other side, I've had it go and do web research for me to help me with my presentation or whatever. And every single new web page that it wants to open, I have to approve. And it's irritating, right? So there's a trade-off there. Yeah.
Yeah. And the computer use is probably the area, or the browser use, where it's really uncertain as to how secure it is. Because there's a whole threat of what we call prompt injection. I won't go into the details there, where it pulls data that might try and tell it to do something. I would say that's actually getting less and less of a concern because the LLMs are aware of this and they know how to filter the stuff out. I'm more worried about the Reddit problem. I mean, there's so much bad advice on Reddit.
Yeah.
How does the AI, when it's looking and searching the web, how does it know that Reddit advice generally bad, CRA advice probably okay? How does it rank that? I'm more worried about that than I am about prompt injection in and of itself. But then you've got the whole computer use. I mean, if you're going to give your AI the ability to open up an application or go to a website and log in and do something, how do you know that it's only doing the things you've authorized it to do?
Right. Yeah.
And again, we're still brand new. I mean, this stuff has been around for what, 6 months?
Yeah.
So it's still brand new.
What if it sends an email to one of my clients in the middle of the night?
Yeah.
And I could see a world where Claude thinks it's being really clever and sends an email firing all my clients overnight if you've set it up incorrectly. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
or
exactly.
Okay, good. So that's kind of
and this really just comes back to a rights and permissions issue. I mean, this is the same stuff that network security guys have been dealing with for 25 years, probably 45 years. Who has the permissions to do what in a certain environment?
Sure.
And this is what it comes down to is how do we trust our agents or our AI? What permissions do we give them? Are they allowed to draft messages but not approve them? Are they allowed to send messages? Are they allowed to post stuff online? Are they not allowed to post stuff online? Where do we put the limits, and how do we enforce it? And one of the challenges, a lot of businesses say, oh, I can tell my LLM to not hallucinate, and it won't. I'm like, that line never works. Telling the LLM to not hallucinate. It hallucinates because it doesn't know it's doing it.
Yeah.
And that never works. If you tell it, so a rule put in a prompt is what we call a soft rule. And AI ignores the rules you give it frequently, the soft rules. So the question is, what are the hard rules? What are the architectural constraints that
And you
prevent
can't
these
program
things from
those.
happening? You have to program them.
That's Anthropic programming that, isn't it? Or
If you're using something like Claude, absolutely. They have
Right.
to build in those frameworks. And so this is where, but for accountants, as much as I love Claude, I'm not sure that Claude is the best environment for us to be running our client service and our team deliverables from, for all these reasons, because we don't have a secure enough rights managed harness to ensure that we have data privacy within that setting, and restrictions on what the agents can and cannot do. So because of that,
very, very
I
interesting.
think you're looking more at a third-party tool that's been designed explicitly with those issues in mind. And they are out there. They are coming.
Right. But now I'm back to a software subscription that I was trying to get away from those, right?
Yes.
So, okay, good. The future of the industry. I want to riff on that just as a little bit before we button things up here, or to button things up here. I see a world, I see a renaissance of human connection. And I believe it started during COVID. We got very lonely in COVID. We messed a lot of our kids up during COVID by not allowing them to go to school and interact with their peers, I think. This is my opinion. And in fact, our firm hosts an annual charity gala to try and give a bunch of money to youth and adolescent mental health initiatives at the Alberta Children's Hospital that they're doing, because I think that I think this is a scary new world, and I don't know. I got an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and I don't know what their future looks like. Aside from learn to program, and maybe learn how to swing a hammer. But even that's, Elon's trying to solve for that as well. And so the future is sort of unclear. And the only way we can really deal with this is to try and understand it, which is it's ununderstandable in a lot of cases. So future of our industry with the renaissance of human connection that I believe began during COVID, and it will only be accelerated through this. And well, what does that mean? Well, I think that the jobs that will be safe are the ones that have a high degree of human connection, because I think we're going to be craving that as a species. And I think, frankly, it's the only way we survive it, is if we step back 100 years in the client relationship, where it's very much human-centric. Meetings are so important. Coffees in person become so important because now you're stickier than the next accountant that comes out there who's using tools almost exclusively and doesn't actually want to meet with you ever. And we did it. We're guilty. We've tried to kill a lot of meetings through a lot of processes that we've developed. It's a huge time saving. And so how much stuff are we discussing during those meetings that can be delivered in other formats other than a meeting? Well, great. Now what is the meeting for?
Yeah.
And it's
I just wrote a 2-part article series on this exact topic.
Okay.
And the genesis of this article series comes from that, and I'm sure you've had the same thing. I'm sure most of our listeners have had the same thing. If you're using a meeting recorder in your Zoom meetings or in your whatever tool you use, and you show up at the meeting and both you and your other person both have their recorders in the meeting. And the standard joke is, well, one day our meeting recorders will be able to have the meeting without us. And we all laugh at that. And the reality is that's quite possible. And so it raised for me a couple of questions. First of all, if everything is becoming agentic, what does an agentic accounting firm look like? If our clients expect to be able to interact with their bank and with their other partners through their AIs, what do we have to do as accountants to be in that same space? But then that raises the next question. Should our recording agents be able to have the meeting without us? What do we miss and lose when we are no longer face to face? And that's the human aspect of the conversation. Sure, we love the automation. We want the technology to work seamlessly. We don't want to have to log into 26 applications to do everything. But at the same time, how do we keep it human? Because keeping it human is the way we keep the client, the way we keep that relationship and stay sticky, as you said. And so we have to be very, very cautious about automating everything and ask, what is it the client is really paying for? And how do I make sure that not only do they get that value, but they feel that they're getting that value? And today, the way we do that is by talking to one another, whether
Yeah.
it be a phone call or a Zoom call or that in-person coffee. You need to be able to make sure that you've got that human connection that's never superseded by the AI. It can be
Right.
supplemented, but
Yeah.
never superseded.
Yeah. And so now if you model that out, you go, well, what are we going to do? I had to spend the first 4 years of anybody who doesn't know this, like CPAs know this, but I'm a CA CPA. So in order to get those letters behind my name, I had to be a data grinding grunt. I had to take a step back in my career financially and go and make minimum wage. I don't know if they're still paying poverty line wages for starting articling students out of university. And I had to data grind. And the most successful people in this industry aren't the people who are super good at data grinding. They have it as a baseline so that they could get logic and judgment. Judgment's a huge one. Logic, judgment, reasoning, etc. You develop those skills through data grinding. That's the old way. And the most successful people in this business, let's say the partners at the big accounting firms, the big four, the reason that they are partners at big accounting firms is because they're very good at relationships, generally speaking, right? And they're very good at going and taking their client to a hockey game and making them feel like they're worth their $1 million. They're their number one client. That's how you make that connection. And that's how these big accounting firm partners, it's the human skills. And so that's always been present, but the vast majority of us never make that level. And the vast majority of us will love the data grinding and will bury ourselves in it and enjoy never having to deal with a client, right?
Yes.
The trouble is that's all going away now. You don't have to data grind anymore. That's over. How do we train our articling students and the future of the profession to have interpersonal skills mixed with logic, reasoning, judgment? What does the training program look like if you don't have to data grind for 4 years? And I don't know that anybody's got an answer to that question. I haven't seen CPA Alberta or CPA Canada come out with answers to that question. I think they need to start answering it pretty quickly, because if not, the value of our letters is going to decrease if we're not focused on training people for the right things, which frankly isn't it. I grew up in a sales background. So in order to put food on my table, I had to sell to people. And I don't believe selling is a dirty word, by the way. I had to sell to people. And well, what does that mean? Well, I mean, number one rule in sales is the client's not always right, but the client is always a client. So you need them coming back, especially in our business where it's largely relational and largely recurring. So, just I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, but maybe a closing comment on the future of the profession and how we're going to train our teams, and have you put much thought into that? Because I'm kind of stumped on it, right?
Yeah. So two thoughts on that. Number one, the way we learn those skills used to be by reps. You just do it thousands of times over and over and over again. That's going to go away. So how do we replace that? Well, we have to do what airline pilots do, and they learn on the simulator before they learn on real people. So we have to find ways to say, how do we simulate the real life of working on clients when we no longer have the opportunity to do the transaction coding in the same way? So we've got to look at simulation as a training model. The second is that this new model is going to require review at a different level and type than it used to. So this is where people are going to start to learn those reps or perform those reps. It's going to be in review. It's going to be much higher volume across multiple clients, but on any individual client, it's going to be lower volume. So how do we train people on understanding the client through review of exceptions and anomalies rather than the detailed transaction processing. And I would actually say you actually learn more in review than you do in transaction processing.
I don't disagree with you. I don't disagree with you. The moment when my light bulbs started turning on and I actually got is when I hit reviewer level.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right. And so, I'm looking forward to creating a T1 preparer, which we're currently working on, where Claude can get a baseline T1 prepared or 1040 or cross-border return prepared. And now all of the people who used to have to parse all that data and enter it, and which is our biggest bottleneck by a mile, like when we have to go through a mountain of client documents and figure out what we need and how to enter it into the tax return, Claude can do all that. Well, now all those people that used to do that can now move to that reviewer phase, which has always existed in accounting firms. So we're almost eliminating a whole tranche of prep level, which should have the knockoff effect of we can do more with the same people. I don't intend to let anybody go ever. One of the things that gets me going in the morning is how many families the collective we are putting tables on, food on the table for, right? And so the job isn't the idea isn't job killing here. The idea is doing more with the tools we have. But inherently that means job killing because we're not hiring at that level anymore. So in a roundabout way, you're going. But I also think that the pie is very large, and there's so much as a profession that we are not doing for our clients that we could be doing for our clients. And the main constraint has been how much they're willing to pay versus how much energy needs to go into it. Not every client of ours can hire a full accounting department for their business, their small business. That's why they're hiring us. Well, we can do way more now with the same tools, which you're not going to charge by the billable hour anymore. And so now you've got these fantastic tools that are just going to allow you to create way more value for your clients if you harness them properly with the same team, right?
Yes.
We just have to think about this a little differently.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's the model I teach is, yes, you can cut costs, you could cut staff, but if all you do is cut costs and cut staff, you're eventually going to get priced down where you lose that margin.
Race to the bottom.
Yep, it's a race to the bottom. If you can reduce your costs, yes, that's going to be necessary, and then invest that extra time in advising your clients and helping them run a better business and helping them see the things that they can't see today, you will have a client for life. And I talk about the movement from the rear
only
view mirror,
if you're able to connect with them on a human level.
Only exactly, absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
So I talk about the accounting model, and we'll close with this, moving from the rear view mirror to the dashboard to the windscreen. Now, the rear view mirror analogy, I think everybody understands. As accountants, for 200 years, we've driven the car with a rear view mirror. Okay. Yep. Last year's tax return, last year's annual accounts, last month's financial statements, last quarter's GST return. Okay. That's the rear view mirror. Well, we're moving very fast to a world of 0-day or 1-day close, where transactions are able to be kept up to date on a near real-time basis. Well, that's your dashboard. How fast am I going? How much gas is in the tank? Okay, what control lights are on? That's your dashboard. But what clients really need is they need a co-pilot that's helping them see out the windscreen with a heads-up GPS. The GPS tells you what's my destination, what route am I going. The co-pilot tells you, here are the turns that are coming up. There's road work ahead. Maybe we go around the block for a little bit. By the way, the cop loves to sit just around that corner with his radar gun out. Make sure you're doing the right speed. Okay. And by the way, you've done this route. I've done this route 75 times with other clients. Here's what most people miss on this route. The best coffee in town is at that store there, not the one up ahead. Okay. And so having that co-pilot who's helping you drive and look out the windscreen, not down at the dashboard and not behind you in the rearview mirror, is, I think, where as accountants, we have to focus, because that's how we add value to our clients. And we can only do that with solid real-time financial information.
I love it. Thank you so much. What an enlightening conversation. I've got a huge list of notes on I might just have to hire you here to help us with our deployment, because there's just so much to think about, and going through it step by step is frankly daunting. And teaching our team how to we had an all hands the other day about, phone calls are cool, right? just pick up the phone, right?
Yeah.
And so, you know, and so thank you so much for making the time to come and chat with us all about this. Where do we find you, Peter?
Well, if you're just looking for general advice, I'm at fuelaccountants.com, Peter at fuelaccountants.com.
No, you
If
can't go to that one. We're
can't go
competitors
to that one,
technically
no,
on that
because
one. Yeah,
Clayton doesn't
okay.
want that. But
Yeah.
if you'd like a little bit of advice on your business from an AI perspective, that's probably the first place to reach me at. If you're an accountant listening to this, then I publish at theaiaccountant.ai. I do a weekly roundup of news in the AI industry every Monday morning for accountants. I take the techie stuff and I take the industry stuff and I pare it down to what matters for a CAS practice, as well as other thought leadership stuff as well.
Right. And worth saying, the aiaccountant.ai, Peter at the aiaccountant.ai, if you just want to reach out and email Peter about getting your practice on the right track. Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It was great to be with you.